Okay, so we have a new episode of Legends and Leaders, and today it's great to have Alka here. You founded a pretty interesting public relations agency that's involved in, styling clients and dressing them and making them really ready to go out and perform well and gain great brand awareness and, boost the type of sales that they do. And I think that you've been able to, accomplish a lot in 15 years in the industry. You've dressed some of the most important people in the entertainment space. So I'm just excited to have you here and to get into your story.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited.
Awesome. So early on, how did your passion for fashion and PR and being in this whole entertainment scene begin?
You know what? My passion really started from my mum. She used to she loves fashion. She loves entertainment and showbiz. So it was really her that sort of left magazines on the table. And I was like a couple of years, I was like probably like 6 or 7, just kind of flicking through them, like OK Magazine. And like back then there was like a magazine called the National Enquirer. So there's like these tabloidy magazines that I was just like flicking through and having no idea what it was, but it just looked fancy and people were wearing dresses. So that's really how I kind of got excited about like fashion, and then it sort of continued throughout like school, and then I went to university, and I started, well, my journalism was my major. I studied at the University of Westminster. So that was like where I really got interested in journalism and writing and fashion, and I was doing all sorts. So I was doing TV over there, I was doing radio, I was also doing magazine stuff. So I kind of got the experience at university of like all different types of things, inside of how the media thing. And then after that, my first job after university, after I graduated in journalism, was at Vogue. So I started working at Vogue, and not many people actually are able to kind of say that they worked at Vogue straight after university. And I was super lucky enough to do that. Like I was so grateful. And literally it was just by chance that I actually got to, work there. And yeah, that was a great experience. That was just the best time ever. And it's not, people think that Vogue, oh, like Devil Wears Prada, it's like, very, very like uppity and all that types of things. And it was just the nicest place ever. Like people were so sweet. The editor was really nice. Everybody that I was working with was just so sweet. So yeah, I was working there for a while, and then I just realized like it was kind of like a day-to-day sort of like 9 to 5 job, right? You're at your desk, you're sort of like just, writing stories, and you have a deadline and like all the things, and it was kind of like a mundane thing. It got to me, and it was kind of like, okay, this is what I want to do like every single day. Like, is it actually for me? And so I finished that job, and I experimented with like styling, and like I also was a TV host, and then I also did a little bit of radio too after that. So I kind of delved into all these sorts of things, and then by that age I was like 26. And in like my culture, like at 26, you want to have to settle down, you get a boyfriend, you want to start a family. That's like the traditional route. And I wasn't ready for any of that. I didn't have a boyfriend, I didn't have anything. So I always also wanted to move to America. That was one of my things. When I was a little girl, I think I came to America when I was like 16 years old, and I loved it. Like one, and also from the magazines too, just like looking at the magazines, everything was American, like OK Magazine, American, I think, right? Well, they have an American sort of like a magazine over here, and the National Enquirer is also American too. So I always had this love for America. And obviously like moving out here was something that I really wanted to do. So yeah, so I guess how I moved out here was like the thing where I first of all, I came on vacation. I came on vacation after I like finished all the jobs that I did in England, and I came here for a month. Just kind of scouted the area, see if it was actually somewhere that I really wanted to work. And then I asked a couple of people like, what do you do to work here? Like, and they were really just like telling me that you need to basically move out here to be able to work here, because everybody that everything that you apply for, they want you to work within the next 2 3 weeks. They're not going to wait like 6 months or whatever, because obviously I'm coming from London, I need to have a visa, a work visa. So there were so many things that you have to have in place before you actually make the move, and I've always wanted to do it. So I was like, okay, no problem, this stuff isn't going to phase me. So I went back to London, started applying for all these jobs, and then came back to America for a week in December of that same year, and had a whole bunch of interviews. And the last interview that I had was going to be actually my employer in the long term. And he basically said, and this was a PR job. The only job that I could apply for was PR. Because everything else was like nobody was really like answering me back. So I was like, you know what? I want to move to America. I don't really have any experience in PR, but let me just do it. Let me just go to this interview. I'll just go there for a week. Let me just try it out, and see if this interview like clicks and I get it or whatnot, and let me just see. So anyway, went to America for that week, had the interview with the guy, and he was like, "Look, you've got great experience in like fashion and styling and all these things, and you talk well and whatnot, and you make great connections. We will try you out. No, we will hire you as long as you sort of do a little bit of work for us in London, because obviously when you move to America, there's a whole process. It's like a visa process where you have like 6 months to talk to the attorneys, talk to the lawyer. There's the whole thing. So whilst I was in London, just preparing my visa and all those sorts of things, I was also doing a little bit of PR. So when I moved out here, essentially it was 6 months later. I remember this moment too, was kind of crazy. I remember this moment where what was my first day at the job. It was a startup PR company. And basically, my boss wasn't there. He was in Europe traveling. And I walked into, and I was actually the showroom manager. I was like the head of everybody. So it was the boss, and then it was me, and then all like the interns and assistants. So I remember opening the door, and then all these girls were like, just like, "Oh, you're the new showroom manager. Nice to meet you, whatever." And I was kind of nervous because obviously, one, I didn't know anything about PR essentially. I knew a little bit. I did a little bit when I was in London, but I didn't exactly know like what entirely to do, in a sense, where all these girls were like, "Oh, nice to meet you. So what do we do today?" And I was kind of just put in the deep end. I was like, "Okay, let me just breathe, pretend to open my laptop, pretend to kind of just think about, okay, this is what I have to do," and just wing it. And I feel like that type of experience where you're just thrown into something is so, so important, because at the end of the day, like that is where you get the great experience, you know? And so for me, it was really just about kind of just getting in there, learning about it. And because it was a startup, like I was literally learning everything like that my boss was doing. And we were doing everything together, like building and growing the company together because it was a startup. So that is how I kind of like fell into PR. It wasn't something that I wanted to do, but I moved to LA and I wanted to move to LA, and that was the only thing back then that was available for me. So yeah.
So, how important do you think your background being in London, growing up in London, there's a great fashion culture there and a lot of iconic brands have been built there. How important do you think that was to what you're doing now and to your understanding of taste and style and to overall your company?
Yeah, no, fashion is a great, as fashion in London is fantastic. Honestly, people there are just so cool. Like you can have, there's so many areas in London that people have different style. Like if you go to Chelsea, they have more of a kind of like posher style. If you go to Camden, it's more sort of like hippie, cool.
Mm.
So there's like so many different varieties, and I feel like that sort of I guess London is just like a melting pot of all different cultures. And that's where style just kind of, everyone just is comfortable in their own style, which is great, whereas here in America, I feel like there's, especially in LA, I feel like, there's a lot more sort of like athleisure wear that's like the trend, or like jeans and a t-shirt, or like denim. Denim's like a real big trend over here too. So I feel like with my company, I want to bring out all the different sides of not just essentially London, but the world to America, you know what I mean? To LA, and have people kind of see the different sorts of styles that other countries have, and get dressed in that over here. So that's really what my company is all about. It's kind of just breaking the mold of like just getting new and cool brands to kind of be dressed in and get celebrities to wear them, and obviously like influencers, and get those brands more exposed into the market.
Hmm. So you were able to come over to the US. You knew what you were interested in, but how did you start to found your own company? You had experience previously, but how did you start to build your own?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So, obviously working at a startup company when I first moved out here, I didn't really know anybody, right? I had no connections, no anything. So for me, it was just like starting from scratch with like trying to find friends, trying to find like clients, new clients, to be with the company. So for me, it was really just about like going out and trying to like just make it happen. And then how I started my own business was that, once you're with a, PR company, especially a startup, you really kind of, well, I embraced everything. So everything from the highs and the lows, and basically just learned and everything from the ground up. So there comes to a point when you're working at a startup that you reach a plateau, you know what I mean? Like how far can you go? And obviously I was never going to be the owner because the owner was the owner, you know what I mean? So for me, it was really about like, I know the clients, I know how to get clients. I have a really good set of people that I know with regards to like celebrities and stylists and influencers. So why not do it on my own? You know what I mean? Like, why not actually once you have that skill set, I felt confident to be like, you know what, I can do it myself. You know what I'm saying? But essentially, it's not as easy as that. You can't just start up a company and it's like, oh, let's go type thing. So there was a lot of like nervousness. I was very, very sort of like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to do it. And my boyfriend, who's now my husband, back then, he was like, no, you got this, you can do it. And yeah, there was a lot of sort of like hesitation whether I could do it or not. But I had it within me. I was like, you know what? I know I can do it. And then if it wasn't for my father-in-law, actually, who's now my father-in-law, I guess, my husband's dad. So get this. So me and my boyfriend were dating, 6 months when I started my new company, right? And during those 6 months, obviously, I just made the decision to kind of want to start my own business. And if it wasn't for my father-in-law, who my husband asked, basically his dad, he asked him for the down payment on the rent for the showroom that I got. And if it wasn't for him, who I'd only even seen my boyfriend for 6 months at that time, literally 6 months. So for my father-in-law to have faith in me to be able to do it, there must have been something. I was so grateful. Honestly, I was like, I don't know why you're trusting me, but hey, let's just do this and let's just pray to the gods that it works out. Because I was just very, very like, okay, let's do it. But for me, I think it's all about being driven too. Like that is where I get my sort of like passion from. Like I really love what I do, and making clients happy and like seeing my brands like flourish. Like that is where I really see like success, is when people that I work with, seeing them succeed just makes me so happy. So yeah, essentially starting my own business was tough because I didn't really know, but I was so thankful because if it wasn't for my family back home in London, and then obviously my father-in-law, my husband, like I wouldn't have been able to start this business up. And as a startup too, like it's not as easy as you think, because with the showroom as well, I remember there were nights when we were like, me and my husband, we were both at the showroom. He was doing the shelves, I was like fixing the racks, and I said to him, I was like, look, I'm not a DIY girl, like I can't do DIY, I don't want to do this anymore type thing. I almost gave up when it was like, there was one point where the paint got messed up and I was just like, oh my god, this is just too much, like I can't do this. But I persevered, and my husband was like, no, this is just a small step into kind of like you succeeding, so let's just ride through it, you'll be fine. And I ended up like obviously like opening up the company and whatnot. But there were little like things that kind of just made me feel like, oh, this is just so long, I can't do it. But I knew that the end road was going to be like soon, and I just sort of really just pushed my way through it, and I guess the rest is history.
100%. It is. Well, it's great that you did get through it and that you've built something that's your own. So,
Yeah.
one of the aspects that clients, like to come to you for is the boosted awareness that you're able to provide. Can you just share a little bit about like what goes into crafting something that can get that type of awareness that someone who works with you really wants?
Yeah, so brands join us, whether it be clothing brands, shoe brands, bags. They join us because they want exposure for their brand in the US, particularly. I also do UK stuff, but particularly the US, where we kind of like, take everything out. So for example, what we do is like, once a collection or once a brand signs up with us, we kind of make a hit list of like, okay, these are the girls that we want, these are the kind of influencers that we want. And we really push to place it on those sorts of people. And some of our clients have done extremely well. Like one of our clients that we had last year, at the end of last year, they were gross to making over 300 million in sales in the US, which is great because, that sort of success just makes me feel like, wow, we're doing actually a great job. You know what I mean? And the placement, and the biggest placement that I got last year was one done by me, where I worked like at least like 3 or 4 months trying to do, and that was Kylie Jenner. Kylie Jenner wore one of their bags. She posted it on their story. She posted it on her stories, and that went crazy for them. That bag, especially during Christmas time, just went crazy. So for me, that was really, really a great success, and I just couldn't be happier. Honestly, I was so proud of not just like the brand itself, but proud within like myself that I can actually do it. You know what I'm saying? So
Mhm.
those sorts of little wins just make me feel like, okay, this is a great industry to be in, and just makes me want to do more.
So how did you go and start to develop these types of relationships, to be able to put a bag on Kylie Jenner, to start to dress Kim Kardashian? Like how do you craft these relationships and then also maintain them?
Yeah, it's honestly all about, if you don't ask, you don't get. That's that's the philosophy that I live by. You really need to sort of go there, and talk to people and ask people and email people, even if you don't know them, email them a nice email, be nice to them, go to events, and I always say to be nice, and being nice is so important because you really want to make a good impression on whoever you speak to, because at the end of the day, you never know what they're going to have, coming up for you, or they might have an opportunity for you. Like there's so many things that, you know, that might happen if you're just nice to somebody. You know what I mean? They'll remember you. Whereas if you're rude to someone, they're never going to talk to you ever. You know what I mean? So I think that, when you are networking with people, be as friendly as you can, like take their number down, follow up with them, like always sort of. And I'm also one to kind of follow up with people too. I think that's the industry as well, because sometimes people live busy lives, you know what I mean? So the follow up is really important as well. Once you've spoken to somebody and you've given them your email, you've exchanged emails, send them an email, follow up on that email. And obviously if they're busy, then that's totally fine. But I feel like, the follow up is also important, as well as kind of like taking down the information as well. So yeah, that's essentially how I kind of like make my connections and made them, is just by going for it. And, I feel like finding like stylists, for example, too, like you need to be smart with the way that you find stylists, like, for example, if you want to find out Kim Kardashian stylist, sometimes it might not be on easy as like Googling it. It might be sort of, you have to go into like her tag pictures, or whatever it is. There's so many ways that you have to like find things about people. And I think that we do a great job about doing that, so yeah.
So, would you say there's like any times where, a brand wanted something specific expectations that they had, and then you kind of did something a little bit different from that, and it worked out well? Or like, are there any interesting stories that maybe kind of were a bit unconventional in how you styled somebody or placed an item on them that you could share?
Differently. Let me see. I mean, most of our placements are like red carpet placements, magazines. We do lots of editorial stuff. We also do lots of events as well. So, I think that when it comes to kind of like something that's different, I don't know. I feel like we kind of are that, not textbook, because I feel like we definitely
Mhm.
do cool things. Like we do campaign shoots where it's a collaboration between like X celebrity and the brand, and then with that we do like a launch party and a photo shoot. So there's so many things when it comes to like doing PR and like getting the brand out there. So we definitely use like many ways of trying to kind of like make sure that the brand is kind of known. Do you know what I mean? And also
Mhm.
right now, like TikTok is a huge thing, right? So many of the brands, and many brands that come to us about like how should we increase our social media following and what do we do? Like TikTok is such a huge platform. And one of our clients that we had, like that brand is doing so well. She's up to like, I think this year she's doing like six figures, which is fantastic for her. And she, has done extremely well. So I think that there are so many platforms right now where you can do really well. You just need to be really, really driven, and also really just sort of like focused on it too, So that's really important. Is just to get on those trends, get on the TikTok, get on Pinterest. Pinterest is another big platform right now where brands are using that to kind of take advantage of. And also Instagram too. Instagram is always going to be there, but there are other platforms that are now coming into play that also is really big with regards to kind of brand exposure. And if you do it correctly, you can do really well.
Mhm. Definitely agree. So you've been doing this for, 15 years or so. What would you say has kind of changed most since you started versus what you're doing now? What are some of the lessons that you've learned along the way?
I think lesson wise, there's been a lot of lessons that I've learned. I kind of just embraced all the lessons, And I feel like for me, as a business owner now, I wish I did business at school, just because nobody teaches you these things. Nobody teaches you about like taxes, nobody teaches you about invoicing, nobody teaches you about like the legal side of things. So for me, I really learned how to become a boss while actually being a boss. You know what I mean? Which is the craziest thing. But I've actually, and I am still learning, you know what I mean? I'm still learning about like things about taxes, and things about like invoices, and all these sorts of legal things that you're learning all the time. So I don't feel like I'm fully ever gonna not learn, because I feel like when you constantly learn things, and I'm also open to like learning too. So I feel like when you constantly learn things, that's what makes life just like the best, and just interesting.
Yeah, exposing yourself to new ideas, new people, it definitely makes it
Yeah,
exciting and different. Yeah. So,
yeah.
you've been able to work with some incredible people. One person is Kim Kardashian. What would you say like was most impactful about that experience working with her? And you've worked with her, I think, a couple times.
Yeah, so I think the Kardashians are a great sort of, vehicle to get your brand out there. So, for example, with Kim, one of our clients got her bikini brand on Kim. So well, we sent it to Kim's people, and then I think a couple of weeks later, Kim ended up wearing it, and that brand sold out in that bikini. And for that brand to sell out, it was a small, like, I think it was a Russian brand. And so that moment where Kim wore that piece, the owner herself for the bikini brand, she was just like in awe. She was crying, she was in tears, she was so happy. So that makes me feel so wonderful, like great. And again, with like Kylie, last year when she wore one of our clients' bags, that went viral and it went crazy too. And that brand like I think it made like, gosh, don't remember the number, but it went crazy and the brand was super happy. And obviously, that Kylie Jenner, Kendall Jenner, the Kardashian effect, it really makes wonders for your brands. Like they really do get it out there, even though they're not actually essentially like posting about it or tagging it or whatever the case is, just them wearing it. And then it's our job really to like publicize that. So for example, if Kim's wearing it, we then write down or send press releases to all like the magazines and like the newspapers and all the things and just say, hey, look, Kim's wearing X brand, credit it. You know what I mean? And that's the way to kind of get it out there, is when like all the publications are talking about like your brand. And then that's what makes the brand kind of build and build. And obviously what we do is we just try and build upon that.
So are there like even deals involved in this type of aspect, or is it like just sending something for like more promotional, and then if they like it, they'll just wear it? Like, how do these work?
Yeah, so there's two types of things where, sometimes obviously like, celebrities get paid to wear pieces. What we do and what I try and do is I try and not do that side of things, because I feel like, most of the clients that we do have, they're more like emerging brands. They're more sort of brands that, are small businesses still. We have brands that are like huge brands too, which have the cash to kind of do that. So with the brands that don't have that money, we basically just gift them. And also it's our relationship. So for example, like it's my relationship with like the stylist, like Kim's stylist or like Kylie's stylist, or, like Gigi Hadid or Bella Hadid's stylist. So, it's me basically trying to push that brand onto the stylist to say, hey, look, this is the new hottest thing. Like, please let me know if you can push it on X person. And then obviously, if it works out, it works out. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But it's really where we come into play with our relationship with that particular person, whether it be a celebrity directly and we know them directly, or we know a stylist that styles that person and then get it on via them. And then obviously you get the deals where it's like the paid deals too. You can go directly to like Kylie Jenner's people, Kim's people, and you make that deal. Obviously those deals are so expensive. Like, you're talking like hundred thousands and, endless amounts. So if the brand has that amount of cash, then that's great. But if it doesn't, we do it the traditional route where we, use our relationships to kind of make it work.
Interesting. So just the last question that I have, what do you aspire to do now? What are some of your short-term or long-term goals over the next, let's say, 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I think obviously because we are still, I mean, we're a growing business, so I want to scale the business as much as possible. And right now, we're primarily just fashion, but I really want to get into more like the beauty end of things, even do like hotels and even do like restaurants and
Oh,
all those sorts of things and PR those things. You know what I mean? So really kind of growing the company in different avenues, because I feel like fashion is fantastic, but there's a lot of more money to be made in other avenues too, like also like products as well. Like, for example, like Stanley Cups, Stanley
hmm.
Cups, it went crazy because everybody was holding the Stanley Cups. So we have another client like that where it's called Hydro Jug. And it's like, those jugs where it's like a Stanley Cup. So, it's our goal to kind of get that viral and that get that going crazy as well. So, we're using, and I honestly just want to kind of branch out into different areas because I feel like
Hmm.
it's just fun, and I never take anything too seriously when it comes to work, because I always tell my girls too, PR is an ER. Like, no one's gonna die, you guys. So, like, if a dress is ripped, it's okay. It can be sewn back up or whatever the case is. Like, you don't need to cry about it. Like, it's not that serious. You know what I'm saying? So when it comes to like work wise, like I'm always kind of relaxed in a sense where obviously I'm a boss, so I really try and like make sure that everything is going to plan. But I'm also kind of open to new opportunities. You know what I mean? Because I feel like when you're open to those sorts of things, like anything can happen. But yeah, definitely growing the company. I think that there's so many exciting things that we've got coming up in regards to like beauty, and we're also talking to a hotel. So there's a lot going on. So stay tuned. It's going to be really exciting for us.
That's awesome. Well, I'm definitely excited to see what you're going to do next. I think what you're doing now is definitely pretty interesting, and I know it's helped a lot of brands succeed in maybe ways that they wouldn't have been able to do before. So I appreciate you coming on and sharing
Yeah.
your story, and I look forward to to what's next in the future.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.